Okay, so you find yourself needing to thread a sewing machine, whether you're new at this or you just wanted a few pointers to refresh your memory. We'll be using a classic, this is a Singer Classic 44S, and over the next few minutes I'll go over some of the basic threading details. It'll vary from one machine to another, but most of these components you'll find pretty easily on most machines. So let's go over some of the basics now, get you threaded and stitching away. One quick detail regarding the placement of your spool threads. Some people will prefer to place the spool on the machine itself. Others, like myself, prefer to have a separate standalone thread holder or spool holder. In the case of threading right onto the machine, you would simply place it onto this little gizmo here. These also come with a stopper of sorts, if you will. This goes right on here, and then you begin the threading process. The other option is to have it separate. I like these stands, they're pretty heavy. Well, you can find some that are pretty cheaply made online. Make sure and spend a few more dollars. Get the ones with the heavy metal bottoms so that they don't tip over. But you basically place the entire spool onto your holder, pull it up and over this piece here. It holds the tension just right. So let's go ahead and get started. Now, before we begin threading the machine into the needle, we do have to have a bobbin full of thread, much like this one here. Let me show you how you fill an empty bobbin. These particular bobbins, maybe I got about a dozen or so for $5, pretty cheap. I also like to use this little bobbin holder. Sure beats having to open a box or having them roll around all over the place. You can even turn it over, they're not going to spill. And you can quickly access a piece just like that. On the bobbins, I have some of these metal ones. Now, these came with my Featherlight machine. I haven't tried any of these plastic ones on the old machine. I just use these as this is what came with that one. But for this purpose, we're going to go ahead and use the plastic ones. All right, let's get started. We're going to go and use this yellow thread here and pull it right up the top of the holder. I like to turn it this way so it doesn't pull off the back. And we're going to go ahead and come around, and right in front of it you'll find the bobbin winding spindle, or rather the bobbin winding tension disc. All right, we're going to go ahead and wrap that thread counterclockwise and bring it on down. Once we have pulled the thread to the side, we're now going to thread this bobbin. Success. Once we have the bobbin locked over to the right, we'll hold on to this thread and step on the foot control and fill the bobbin. You want to hold on to the thread for just a few seconds while it spins and fills the bobbin. Right, very good. With the bobbin filled, we are now ready to give it a little snip. We'll be taking this and loading it into the machine in order to thread the needle. Okay, now that we have the bobbin filled, it's time to drop the bobbin in the machine. You know, some people like to do the top thread first, then maybe the drop-in bobbin next. I have, for some reason, just made a habit out of dropping this in first and then doing the top thread, which I'll walk you through in just a moment. we'll drop this bobbin in. Some are placed on the side of the machine, but on this machine, the Singer Classic, I think this is the 44S. As long as you understand how the thread is dealing with this part of the machine, you'll be okay. Now, before dropping the bobbin into the machine, I do want to point out that there are two small grooves here. There is one located here, and there's one located here. So you essentially have three small walls. This would be wall 1, this would be wall 2, and wall 3. Okay, now that we have the bobbin full of thread, it is now time to drop it into the machine, and I'm going to walk you through the exact steps in pulling the thread through and to the front. Let's get started. Next, we're going to pull it up slightly, keeping the thread on this side of the middle wall. Remember, I mentioned there's 1, 2, and 3 little walls, or teeth, if you will. We have just gone between the first and the second one. Now we're going to pull the thread up slightly so that it goes between the second and the third one, and pull forward slightly until it pulls the bobbin, keeping the thread lined up towards the top there. We will carefully place the cover directly on top, snap it into place. Let's go to the top of the machine and deal with the top thread. So now we're going to go ahead and walk you through the top thread. There's several guides that we're going to follow here. You can usually do this in 30 seconds or less. Once it becomes second nature, you'll be doing it without thinking. I'm at the back of the machine right now. We're going to make sure and lift this lever. That lever will affect this piece of the machine. That is your pressure foot lifter. Very important to have this lifted before we begin threading. All right, so we'll bring the thread up on top of the machine, snap it into this guide. Okay, all you have to do is just... Next, we want to turn the hand wheel toward you, in this case toward me, until the take-up lever is in its highest position. That take-up lever is this part of the machine. You'll notice I'm raising and lowering it, and that is being affected by the turn of this wheel. So we want to turn this just enough to raise that part of the machine to its highest level. Let's give that a shot. About there is good. That'll give us access to this part of the guide where we'll be feeding the thread. Now that we have the bobbin in place and we pull the thread up, it's time to do the top thread. Remember my preferred gadget here? We're going to go ahead and pull this thread across the top of the machine, and we're going to secure it at this guide here. Then we're going to bring it around this guide. On the classic Singer 44S, these steps are actually numbered. If you're using this machine or similar, it's indicated by the number 2. You'll notice that on this one piece here, there is a place where you will actually slip the thread into this right here. Your thread will now come around this piece, but it needs to slip between these two metal pieces. Let me show you what that should look like. The next step is to pull the thread down. This opening here, indicated by number 3 or similar. So we've just come up from this guide, we bring the thread down to number 3. Okay. Again, this thread will come around to the front of this part, so you can see. And when you pull on it, it will become engaged in this particular eye right here. Once we've gotten that far, we then proceed with pulling the thread down into step number 6. At step 6, we're going to pull the thread down and engage this piece here. This guide will push the thread further back into the machine, so all we do is bring it around and pull forward. We're then going to move the thread back again and engage this piece here. This piece here. So we want the thread between this little metal piece and the top piece. I sure hope I'm capturing that well. Right in there. All right, I had to fidget with this just a little bit. Normally I use 2 hands for this, but I'm going to just do it with one so that I don't cover what I'm doing. Again, we're going to pull it towards the back and engage that little piece back there. Okay, at this point you are ready to either manually thread the needle, or if you have one of these little gadgets here, it will thread the needle for you. If you have this one installed, you're in for a lot of fun. Threading the needle is as simple as pulling this little piece down. Make sure that the little prong that is connected to this feeds right through the needle. So we will pull this down. We then take the thread, and there would be 2 hooking points on this threader. One is here, the second one is down here. Drop the automatic threader right down here, push it right through the needle. We then hook it once, then twice, pull on my thread slightly, and release the automatic threader just like this. What this has done now has pulled the thread right through the needle. I normally have to go in there with a seam ripper and pull the loop right through and finish the job. But with this in place, we now have the bottom and the top thread installed. We can pull both threads forward and then under the foot. And we're ready now to pull the bottom thread up and prepare to sew. With the threads pulled to the back now, I often like to just pull the top thread back to the top here so that I can get a good grip on it. And I want to be holding that just with a little bit of tension. When I turn the wheel on the side of the machine, the needle will drop as I hold this thread. Remember, the bobbin thread is still laying flat against the back. We're going to have the needle drop to the bottom and engage the bobbin thread. I'll move slowly so that you can see it pull the thread back up to the surface. After you pull both threads back, we will then turn the wheel on the side towards us, causing the needle to drop and pull the bottom thread up. You'll see that we now have a little loop coming to the surface. This is the bobbin thread. We will pull the entire thing through. All right, pulling the threads to the back once again. Let's take it for a quick little test run. Drop our foot and see how we do on this stitch here. And here's a little example of the stitch that we just put through. Take your time, try it out several times. I know it took me a couple of days to finally get the hang of threading the machine. You have that top thread, the bobbin, you have to get all of this working together, but it seems to me now that whenever I do have to drop a new bobbin in there, the entire process seems to take less than a minute. Good luck to you. Bye-bye.